You know, there's something quite peculiar about truth. It doesn't like to be shouted from rooftops. It doesn't arrive wrapped in gold or thunder. It's far too shy for that. Truth, in its most intimate sense, behaves more like a whisper behind your shoulder, the sort of whisper that appears only when you've grown quiet enough to hear it. Most people miss it, not because it hides, but because they're making too much noise searching for it. They go rushing about, reading every sacred text, sitting at the feet of every teacher, collecting spiritual souvenirs like tourists in a cosmic gift shop, and still the whisper never quite reaches them. You see, wisdom doesn't reveal itself to the curious mind that wants to have it. It reveals itself to the still mind that allows it to happen, because there's a great misunderstanding about knowledge that the more you know, the wiser you become. But true wisdom isn't cumulative. It doesn't stack up like coins in the vaults of the intellect. It subtracts. It removes. It erases. And this is why the old mystics spoke in riddles and the Zen masters answered questions with laughter or silence. They weren't trying to be difficult. They were trying to protect you from your own cleverness. They knew that as long as you believed wisdom was something to acquire, you would be too busy grasping at shadows to notice the light that's already shining. The most sacred things are always hidden in plain sight. You can't point to them, because the moment you point, you separate yourself from what is being pointed at. The Tao that can be spoken, as the old saying goes, is not the eternal Tao. So we play a little dance, we talk about it, knowing full well that words will fail. But through the failure of words, you might begin to feel what they were trying to indicate all along. That's the secret game of spiritual teaching. The teacher tells you stories not to fill your head, but to empty it. He gives you words so that you can discover the silence between them. He leads you into paradox so that logic finally collapses. And when logic collapses, oh, what a relief, because at last there's nothing left to stand on. And suddenly you are floating in the vastness of what is. And here's the curious thing. What we call hidden wisdom isn't hidden at all. It's simply overlooked because it's too obvious, like the eyes trying to see themselves, or a knife trying to cut its own edge. The self cannot grasp the source of understanding because it is that very source. You are looking for what is doing the looking. You are chasing what is already running through you. So when the sages say that wisdom must be kept secret, they don't mean it's locked away behind temple doors. They mean that it hides in the open, not because the world conceals it, but because you do. You hide it behind your seriousness, behind your goals, behind your desperate need to be good or enlightened or right. The truth doesn't need to be found. It only needs to be noticed. And the noticing begins the moment you stop chasing and start listening. So before we go any further, I invite you not to believe, not to follow, not even to agree, but simply to relax the mind for a while. Let go of this idea that something is missing, that there's a riddle to be solved. The secret is not somewhere else. It's humming quietly beneath the noise of your thoughts, waiting for you to remember. And perhaps, if we're very quiet together, we might hear it again. You see, people have this rather strange idea that silence means nothing is happening. They imagine silence as an empty room, a void, a kind of spiritual blackout. But that's only because we've been taught to treat sound and thought as the proof that life is going on. Yet, the funny thing is, life itself is profoundly silent. The universe, even with all its explosions and galaxies spinning about, makes no noise at all, unless there are ears to hear it. Sound is not in the explosion, it is in the listening. So when we say we are seeking silence, what we are really seeking is a return to that listening, to the awareness that holds everything else. Now, imagine this. You're sitting by a stream, and it babbles, it gurgles, it sings, and then a bird calls, a leaf falls, the breeze hums through the grass. You hear all of that? Yes, But you also hear something else, something behind it, the space in which all those sounds appear. That space is silence. It's not the absence of the babbling stream. It's the presence of your own awareness. We think of silence as something to achieve, as if the world must go quiet before we can find peace. But the truth is rather the reverse. When you find peace, the world becomes silent, even while it's still making noise. The silence isn't out there, you see. It's in here, in the listening itself. That's why the mystics never really taught you how to silence the mind. Because trying to silence the mind is just more noise. It's the sound of someone arguing with their own thoughts. The mind is like a mischievous monkey. The more you tell it to sit still, the louder it chatters. So instead, the wise let the monkey dance. They let the thoughts rise and fall like waves, but they remember they are the ocean, not the wave. So what is this silence? It is not a trick of meditation or a moral achievement. It is the natural condition of being aware. When you stop trying to fix yourself, to prove something, to get somewhere, when all that effort falls away, what remains is listening. And in that listening, you begin to realize that everything you thought was noise, your worries, your desires, your plans, was also music, part of the great symphony. The trouble was never with the sound, but with the listener who forgot he was listening. The wise man listens to life the way a musician listens to a string, not trying to hold the note forever, but feeling the vibration as it comes and goes. He doesn't interrupt the music by analyzing it. He simply lets it play. That's why silence isn't something you practice. It's something you notice. It's always there, underneath the clatter of thought, underneath the conversation of the world. Even in the middle of the city, with all its horns and engines and shouting, there is a background hum, and that hum is the same silence you find on a mountaintop. So, the first secret is not to run away from noise, but to hear the silence within it. When you can listen, without the need to comment, without the mind whispering, "Ah, yes, this is silence," then you begin to sense the real thing. A silence so full, it contains all sound. It's like discovering that every note of music is made of the same stillness that existed before the first note was played. The sound ends, but the silence was never broken, only revealed. And when you learn to live from that silence, you find a peculiar serenity. Because no matter what's happening, joy or sorrow, laughter or chaos, you are not disturbed. You are simply listening. So when you sit to meditate, don't strain to stop the thoughts. Just listen. Listen not to what is happening, but that it's happening, for in that listening, you may discover the stillness that has been listening all along. Now, there's a peculiar temptation that visits anyone who's had even the smallest taste of awakening, the impulse to tell someone about it. The mind says, "Ah, I've seen the light. Quick, I must explain it to everyone." But you see, that very impulse is the echo of the old ego, disguised in spiritual robes. It wants to be admired, not for its possessions this time, but for its purity. It has traded in status for sanctity. The costume is new, but the actor is the same. Real understanding, though, is like a seed. If you keep digging it up every day to show people how it's sprouting, you'll only kill it. Growth requires darkness, the cool, quiet soil of your own being. It needs time and privacy to push down roots before it can reach toward the sun. This is why, in the old traditions, the deepest insights were kept secret, not because the teachers were stingy, but because they were gardeners. They knew that if you handed a seed to someone who hadn't prepared the ground, it would only wither in confusion. They also knew that speaking too soon, even from sincerity, scatters your own energy. You've perhaps noticed this yourself. When you share a powerful inner experience, it begins to fade the moment you try to describe it. Words flatten it out, like pressing a butterfly between the pages of a book. The beauty remains in outline, but the life has gone. So the wise keep certain things close, not to hoard them, but to let them mature. Silence is not secrecy, it is incubation. And when the time is right, what was silent begins to speak through you naturally in your eyes, your laughter, your way of being. Then you don't need to talk about awakening, because you are awakening, walking about in human form. But of course, we humans love to share. We want to connect. And there's nothing wrong with that, so long as you're aware that no one can truly understand your vision by explanation. Just as you cannot describe the taste of honey to someone who has never known sweetness, spiritual insight cannot be transferred by language. You can only invite others to taste for themselves. You see, there is a kind of sacred privacy to truth, not secrecy out of fear, but intimacy out of reverence. You don't shout your love from the marketplace. You whisper it. You don't take your most precious feelings and post them on a billboard. You protect them, not from others, but from being turned into objects. Because the moment you try to possess the sacred, to make it something you can display or defend, it slips through your fingers. The flower wilts in the hand that clutches it. So, when you feel that bright spark of realization flicker inside you, resist the urge to proclaim it. Sit with it. Let it change you quietly. Let it sink its roots deep into the soil of your silence. When it's ready, it will bloom all by itself, not because you commanded it to, but because blooming is what truth naturally does. And then, curiously enough, you'll find that you don't even want to share it in the old way. There's no longer anyone who needs to be convinced. The seed that once wanted to prove itself has become a tree that simply gives shade. So, keep your sacred growth private, not hidden, but nourished. In its time, it will speak for itself. You know, one of the most subtle tricks of the mind is that it can turn anything into a badge, even enlightenment. You've probably seen this happen. Someone has a beautiful glimpse of truth, a genuine moment of clarity. Perhaps they feel the boundaries between themselves and the world dissolve for a heartbeat, and then the mind slithers in and says, "Ah, I understand now. I am awakened." But the moment you say, "I am awakened," the very I that claims awakening has already fallen back into sleep. It's a magnificent cosmic joke. The ego will sneak into the temple, wearing the robes of the saint, pretending to be the very thing it was supposed to vanish into. And so it goes about announcing, "Behold, I am humble," which of course is the funniest contradiction in the world. Real insight has no owner. It happens the way a breeze passes through an open window. The window doesn't take credit for the wind, it simply allows the movement. And the more open the window, the stronger the current of life that moves through. So when we talk about awakening, it's not something you achieve. It's something that dawns the moment you stop trying to achieve it. The illusion of a separate me striving for perfection is the very veil that covers the light. When that striving collapses, the light is suddenly obvious. It was there all along. It's like mist on the morning lake. As the sun rises, the mist doesn't need to be chased away, it simply evaporates. The lake doesn't become clear. It always was. So too, your true nature was never hidden. It was only misted over by the thought that there was someone who needed to find it. That's why the sages warn, don't mistake the lightning flash of understanding for a new identity. The insight is not a new costume for the old actor. It's the realization that the actor itself is only a role, that behind every mask there is no solid face, only the open sky of awareness. To identify with insight is to capture a butterfly and pin it to your chest, saying, "Look, I've caught beauty." But the moment you claim it, it dies. The living truth can't be possessed. It can only be lived. You see, wisdom doesn't settle into a personality. It dissolves personality. It makes you flexible, spontaneous, ordinary, in the most extraordinary way. You stop needing to be spiritual. You stop needing to be anyone in particular. And what a marvelous relief that is, to no longer defend a title, an image, or a state of mind. To wake up is to stop performing the role of the awakened. You laugh because the joke is on you, or rather, on the one you thought you were. You realize that the searcher was the thing being sought, that the self trying to hold on to understanding was itself the misunderstanding. So, don't wear your awakening like a crown. Let it be like breath, invisible, continuous, unclaimed. The truest insight is the one that leaves no trace of you at all. And when that happens, something delightful begins, a lightness, a playfulness, a freedom to dance without the dancer. For when you stop trying to be wise, wisdom dances you. There's something wonderfully odd about the way we treat the sacred. We behave as though the universe were a stiff-collared gentleman who insists on solemn silence. The holier the subject, the more everyone frowns. Yet have you noticed, everywhere, life is laughing. The rivers giggle over stones. The leaves rustle like applause. Even thunder seems to be the cosmos cracking a joke too big for us to catch. When you really wake up, the first thing that hits you isn't a chorus of angels, it's the absurdity of it all. You see, the great cosmic stage, the frantic seriousness of human beings trying to be important, and you can't help but laugh. Not a cruel laugh, mind you, but the sort of belly laugh that bursts out when a magician finally shows you how the trick was done. Laughter, you see, is the sound of freedom. It's the sound made when a mind stops pretending it's in control. The solemn seeker says, "I must attain enlightenment." And the universe replies, "Oh, darling, you already are." And then both collapse in laughter, because the game was over before it began. That's why the enlightened ones always look like they're having a rather good time. The Zen masters whack you with a stick, then grin. The Sufis whirl themselves dizzy. Even the Christian mystics, if you read them closely, can't keep a straight face for long. For when you glimpse the pattern behind this whole performance, you realize that God is not a king sitting on a throne. God is the dance itself, laughing through a billion faces. Seriousness, on the other hand, is the mask of fear. We become serious when we think something terrible might happen, when we're trying to control life so it won't embarrass us. But life is embarrassing. That's its charm. The child who splashes in the puddle doesn't apologize for the mud. Only the adult does, because he's forgotten that the universe is playing. So the wise learn to laugh, not at the world, but with it. They see that laughter is a kind of bow, a surrender to what is. When you laugh, for a moment the self disappears. There's no you in the joke, only laughter itself. And in that instant of egolessness, you are closer to God than in 1,000 hours of grim meditation. This is why the Buddha is always smiling, and why Jesus, I suspect, would have been a terrible dinner companion for the pious. He'd have turned the water into wine and then made a pun about it. When you take the universe lightly, you don't become careless, you become supple. You can bend with the wind instead of snapping under it. Humor is the elasticity of the soul. It keeps you from freezing into dogma or despair. So, if you find yourself getting very solemn about your spiritual progress, stop and have a good laugh, especially at yourself. The cosmic joke has always been this: there was never anything to attain, because there was never anyone apart from the attaining. And when you see that clearly, oh, what relief, what laughter! You discover that even the sound of your laughter is the universe laughing through you. It has often been said that pain is the great teacher, and yet we spend so much of our lives avoiding it, as though the universe had made some terrible mistake in allowing it to exist. We imagine that if we meditate enough, pray enough, discipline enough, somehow life will stop hurting. But that's rather like thinking the ocean should be flat. You see, the waves rise and fall, not because something has gone wrong, but because that's what waves do. And pain is simply the trough of the wave, inseparable from its crest. Without the dark, you would never notice the light. Without silence, there would be no music. Without death, life would have no flavor at all. The truth is, suffering is not a punishment. It's an awakening call. It shakes the dreamer, so the dream can be seen for what it is. And that's why it feels so cruel, because it's honest. It doesn't flatter the ego. It dismantles it. It shows you that all the little stories you've been telling yourself about who you are, what you deserve, what you must achieve, are just that, stories. But here's the paradox. When you stop trying to escape your suffering, when you stop treating it as the enemy, it begins to change its shape. The pain you once resisted becomes energy, alive and luminous. You begin to see that every heartbreak was the universe trying to crack the shell of your illusion so that the light inside could spill out. It's very much like the process of polishing a mirror. Every stroke seems to scrape something away, your pride, your certainty, your comfort, and yet what remains is clarity. Without those abrasions, the mirror could never shine. We forget that what we call grace often comes disguised as ruin. The loss of a job, the betrayal of a friend, the death of a loved one, all these are painful on the surface. Yes, but beneath them lies a secret generosity. They are the universe's way of saying, stop clinging, look deeper. Of course, it's easy to say this when the pain belongs to someone else. But when it's our own heart that breaks, philosophy collapses. And that's exactly the point. For wisdom is not about rising above suffering. It's about falling through it, falling so completely that there's nothing left to hold on to, nothing left to protect. And in that free fall, you discover you were never falling at all. You were being held. Every tear you shed belongs to the sea, and the sea does not waste its water. Nothing in you is broken. It's simply being softened. Suffering is the universe's way of melting the frozen places in the heart so that compassion can flow again. And that's why the saints, after all their trials, begin to glow with a kind of strange joy, a light that doesn't deny sorrow but carries it tenderly as a mother carries a sleeping child. They have learned that grace is not the absence of pain, but the discovery of beauty within it. So the next time life pierces you, don't rush to patch the wound. Look into it. You might just find that what you took for a blade was, all along, a key. It's the oldest illusion in the book, this idea that you are here and the world is out there, that there is a me peering through two little holes called eyes at a vast, indifferent universe. But look closely, and you'll see that this division was never real. It's a useful story. Yes, it helps us find our shoes and pay our taxes, but it's only a story. The truth is, you are not a stranger wandering through the cosmos. You are the cosmos wondering about itself. The eyes are not windows looking out. They are the universe looking in. Every time you breathe, the air flows in and out as if to remind you, there's no boundary here. You inhale what the trees exhale, and they in turn breathe what you give back. It's one great respiration, the earth breathing through 10 billion lungs. The same is true of thought. You imagine your thoughts are private property, fenced off behind the skull. Yet every idea, every word you use, was given to you by others, by language, by culture, by the ages that came before. Even the notion of yourself was whispered to you as a child. You are you, and I am me. And you believed it. But the universe never signed that contract. You see, the ocean doesn't divide itself into separate waves except in our imagination. Each crest thinks it's an individual, proudly saying, look at me, I'm rising. But when the wind shifts, it sighs, oh no, I'm falling. And the ocean chuckles because it knows it was never rising or falling at all, only moving in place, playing at being many when it was always one. That's you. That's me. That's all of this. The entire play of existence, the stars, the dust, the laughter, the sorrow, is one grand motion, pretending to be separate for the sheer delight of reunion. And the funny thing is, when you really begin to sense this, when the boundaries start to soften, you don't become vague or lost. You become intimate with everything. You see the sunlight on a leaf and realize it's your own energy. You hear the cry of a bird and feel it vibrate in your chest. You understand that to harm another being is to wound yourself, because there was never another to begin with. This is what the mystics meant when they said the kingdom of heaven is within you. They didn't mean it's hidden in your liver or behind your ribs. They meant that within and without are the same field, the same miracle of awareness taking every possible shape. When you stop trying to find your place in the universe, you realize you are the place. You are not a part of the puzzle. You are the puzzle and the picture and the eyes that behold it. So, the sixth secret is this. You were never apart from the whole. You were the whole, pretending to be a part, so it could remember how wonderful unity feels when it's rediscovered. And when that dawns on you, not as an idea, but as an experience, you begin to live differently. You stop trying to conquer life and start to cooperate with it. You move like a dancer who knows the rhythm isn't hers but flows through her. You love not because it's moral, but because it's inevitable. For how could the wave not love the ocean? It was the ocean all along. Now we come to perhaps the most scandalous secret of all, one that every philosopher, priest, and life coach tries to avoid, because it's simply too liberating. The secret is this. Life has no purpose, and that's precisely why it's perfect. You see, the modern mind is obsessed with meaning. We're like children who can't enjoy a game unless someone explains the rules first. We ask, why am I here? What am I supposed to do? But imagine asking a flower, why do you bloom? It would blink at you, if flowers could blink, and say, because that's what blooming does. A bird doesn't sing for applause. The sun doesn't rise to fulfill a quota. The stars don't twinkle because it gives them a sense of accomplishment. They simply are. They are the universe expressing itself in music, motion, and color. And you, my friend, are exactly the same. The idea that life must justify itself is a peculiar form of arrogance. It assumes there's someone outside of life judging whether it's been worthwhile. But who is that someone? If you were appointed to evaluate the cosmos, where would you stand to do it? You'd need to step outside of existence to measure its value, and of course, there is no outside. So, you see, the search for purpose is the last trick of the ego. The self says, surely all of this must be leading somewhere. Surely I'm going somewhere. But that's just the mind's way of refusing to dance, unless it's paid by the hour. Life is not a journey, it's a symphony. The point of a symphony isn't to reach the final chord, otherwise the fastest orchestra would be the best. The point is the play itself, the movement, the surprise, the harmonies that bloom and fade. You don't listen to a piece of music just to get to the end of it. You don't watch a wave because you're anxious for it to crash. You watch because it's beautiful. You live for the same reason. When you stop asking for a reason, you begin to see that everything is reason enough. The smell of rain, the laughter of a friend, the warmth of a cup between your hands, these are not steps toward something greater. They are the something greater. But this realization can be terrifying at first, can't it? The mind rebels, saying, if there's no purpose, what's the point of anything? And the answer is, there isn't one, and that's the point. Life doesn't need a point any more than a flame needs to justify its light. Once you accept this, a strange lightness arises. You stop straining toward the future. You stop measuring yourself by destinations. You start to live as a dance rather than a march. Then, whatever you do, washing dishes, walking the dog, writing a poem, holding a child, becomes a sacred act. Not because it's leading anywhere, but because you are finally there. You were never meant to arrive. You were meant to be. And when you truly see that, you'll laugh again, the deep, unguarded laugh of someone who's just realized that the cosmic punchline was always this: there was nothing to prove, nothing to gain, and nothing to lose, because the music was already playing, and it always will be. And so, you see, we've played our little game, 7 so-called secrets that were never really secret at all. They were always hiding in plain sight, waiting for you to notice. And perhaps by now, you've begun to sense the rhythm underneath it all, that there was never anything to reach, nowhere to go, and no one to get there. The ancients used to say that enlightenment is like waking from a dream. But the strange thing about waking up is that the dream doesn't disappear. You simply realize you were the dream all along. The world keeps on spinning. People keep on talking. Traffic keeps on honking. And yet, something has changed completely. You're no longer fooled. You see through the seriousness of the play, and because of that, you can finally enjoy it. You stop trying to fix life and start to marvel at it. You laugh not because everything is funny, but because everything is so profoundly what it is. And here's the final twist. The secret beyond all secrets. There are no secrets. There never were. The truth has been open and obvious from the very beginning, but we've been looking everywhere else. It's like searching for your own eyes. The very thing doing the looking cannot be found as an object. You can't grasp yourself, just as a fingertip can't touch itself, and a flame can't burn its own fire. When you understand that, there's nothing left to chase, nothing left to hide. You can simply be. And that, my dear friend, is the greatest relief in the world. You stop straining to become spiritual. You stop trying to understand what only wants to be experienced. You begin to live the way music is played for the joy of the movement itself. And so, the real teacher is not me, or any book, or any voice, but this moment, right here, right now. It's been whispering the secret to you all along. You are it. The sound of the breeze, the rhythm of your breath, the pulse in your chest, these are the verses of the same song. And when you stop trying to conduct it, you discover that it's been conducting you. So, if you forget everything I've said, wonderful. Forgetting is perfect, because what's real cannot be forgotten. And as we fall again into this great silence, perhaps you'll hear it not the silence of absence, but the silence that hums with life, the silence that was listening even before you began to listen. That, you see, is all there ever was.